second on the issues that the people wanted to talk about was black mental health and the issues around that. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm fortunate to have Edward Davie, Chair of Lambeth Council, Health and Adult Social Service here to speak about this. Ed, I'm going to pass it over to you for you to take this on. But just to mention here that Lambeth Council have recently, in dealing with the poor mental issues or services here, have set up Black Mental Health Commission. And maybe you would want to expand on that as to what is your role.
Yeah. It's fantastic that so many of you have come out at quite short notice. And one of the big issues for me is we recently did a survey in the council specifically with the black community, and the black community, which is a huge part of Lambeth, a very important part. It's more than 20% of our residents, and over the years, despite all the trials and tribulations, the contribution of the black community has been absolutely huge in Lambeth. And the survey that we did recently shows that unfortunately, of all of our residents, groups of our residents, the black community feels most kind of divorced from the council and other public services, and doesn't feel connected and represented and listened to. So that is definitely something that we want to address, and I was really glad to be asked by The Voice to sort this room out. It's a small thing, but I hope it's the start of better reaching out and engagement and listening to you guys. And as a politician, Chuka will know this, you know, it's hard for me to sit here for over an hour and not saying a word. That's just not natural to me. But it was really interesting to hear what was said. And even though I'm a white boy who grew up in Canterbury, in Kent, I can't pretend I listened to Choice FM growing up like Chuka did. But I did come to Lambeth when I was a teenager, and one of the things that attracted me to this area was the fantastic music, the black music, and I ended up running, believe it or not, a ska club in a Jamaican pub called the Denmark in Camberwell. Believe it or not. So, and you know, and that's So you know, and that's one of the reasons I settled here. One of the reasons I stayed is because I love this place. I love the culture. I love the black influence that has you know, improved my diet, improved what I listen to. Maybe not working on my dress sense, but you know, it's a fantastic place, and I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm really glad I've had the opportunity to listen to your conversation. And one of the things that got me into politics was that my parents were actually introduced to each other by Trevor Huddleston, who started the anti-apartheid movement in this country and spent a lot of time in South Africa. And talking about music, he actually gave Hugh Masekela his first ever trumpet when Hugh Masekela was in hospital as a little boy with malaria, and Trevor, who I count as my godfather, found this old trumpet in the streets of this township and gave him this trumpet, and that's what started, you know, one of the most successful jazz trumpeters careers ever. And he introduced my parents to each other, so I wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Trevor Huddleston. And you know, I used to come and visit Trevor in London from Kent, and he used to take me to films about Steve Biko. I actually ended up calling my first rabbit Biko because it was a black and white rabbit together. Anyway, so I've always been interested in the politics around there, and I saw black people and white people working together to overcome that tyranny in South Africa. And it was a massive inspiration to me. And so when I came here, and I was lucky enough to be elected in a ward up the road where Chuka's just been chairing a meeting, thanks for doing that, Chuka. And I found out that before I was elected, Sean Rigg was arrested in the ward I now represent. And he died in Brixton Police Station. Well, more accurately, he was killed by the police. And he had had a long history of very severe mental ill health. And the coroner's report found that he'd been failed by the local mental health trust, and he'd been failed is not quite the word to use, by the Metropolitan Police. And I was shocked that in the 21st century, in the UK, we're not talking about South Africa in the 70s or the 80s, a black man was failed by the system and murdered by state officials who still have not been brought to justice. And so I've been looking into the issues around that, and so has my committee. And I didn't just want to sort out the police, though I do think that we need to do that. I wanted to look at some of the things that had led to that situation, because there is, as you all know, many more black people, particularly black men, who end up in the most severe end of the mental health system. So, like I say, the black population of Lambeth is just over 20%, but the percentage of black Lambeth people in mental health institutions is 50%, and the number of black Lambeth people, the proportion in what they call forensic settings, that is secure mental health, is 65%. So that is and the prevalence of severe mental ill health in black men is 14 times that of white men. Now, it's a very complicated and difficult area, but what I wanted to do was to use the resources of the council and now this new body called the Health and Wellbeing Board, which brings together the NHS, the people that do our housing, the people who do our social services. I wanted to bring all of those resources together and say, what can we do as a community of all different colours and all different resources to sort this out, because this cannot go on anymore. And I know that Trevor would be shocked that it still goes on in this country, and I don't want that on my conscience, that I haven't done everything in my power to sort that out. So that's what we've started to do. I didn't want it to be well-meaning Whitey here chairing it on his own. So I'm really delighted that Jackie here, Jackie Dyer, is co-chairing it with me. Now Jackie will introduce herself, but she's a fantastic person, a fantastic advocate, and has got brilliant experience in the mental health world. And I'm really serious. You know, you might have heard about Lambeth Council becoming a cooperative council, which may or may not mean anything to you. But if it's going to mean anything, it means that people like me make sure that people like Jackie and people like you have the power that you need and the influence you need to make the decisions about your own lives and the services that you use to make it work for you, so that we prevent things like the things that happened to Sean Rigg and other people. Unfortunately, even after Sean Rigg, we've still had Olaseni Lewis. So the purpose of the Commission is to do three things really, is to look at what we can do to prevent particularly black people getting ill in the first place. And that might be in schools, that might be supporting young parents, that might be tackling some of the things like poor housing, which I know we've got some people from housing here, and poverty and unemployment and lack of opportunity. And we heard about all the fantastic talent we've got in this community, in music, but also in other fields. And we're not tapping into that enough and giving people the opportunity to escape poverty and to make the best of themselves, because that really is when people are able to feel better about themselves and achieve the things they can do and not get ill. And also access to appropriate services. Now, if I was a young black man and I was feeling mentally ill, would I want to go to the official, the formal mental health services where I've seen people like Sean Rigg go? I don't think I would. You know, so we have to make sure those services are accessible in a better way. Now, there are examples where black pastors and imams have been trained to deliver family therapy. Even barbers have been trained to do that stuff. I'm not saying that's the complete answer, but we've got to look at creative ideas like that, so that when people aren't feeling well, they know that they can get help in a way that's accessible to them when perhaps it's not always been. And we have to make sure that the experience of being a patient is a better one, that staff respect you, that staff treat you as an asset who has a future, rather than someone to be just drugged up and forgotten about and treated as a problem to be locked away from the rest of society. When we treat people with mental health conditions as having a future, having potential, and we work with them to achieve that potential, then people get better. And apart from that being morally the right thing to do, it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Because, you know, the average cost of a stay at the Maudsley is £50,000. Now, you know, you don't have to do the maths to work out that in this day and age, you know, there's an economic case for sorting this out as well as a moral case. Anyway, as usual, I've gone on too long. I'll let Jackie introduce herself and talk about it from her perspective, and then I'll be really interested in what people have to say in terms of what we might look at, because we've only just started on this journey, and we definitely want to involve as many people as possible. We've got some ideas. So, thank you.